All right, give me just a second to get this so that way I can share everything. All right, so I've got that check sheet that Phil shared on from the slides a little bit more visible so you can see what's going on. The important thing, we've got 3 columns. We really only need to focus on 1 column at a time right here. They're all the same. But really what, we want to see how quickly we can get the information here. It's pretty laid out. It's laid out pretty simply. Top part here is all of the traceability. We have some pass fails here, some numeric inputs, and another pass fail. And then we've got a whole bunch of notes that we can add as well. So with that, let's jump right into how this looks in the inspection itself. We've got the machine, we've got the operator name, and we've got a cavity number. And so let's take a look at the pass fails. We know are we looking at the pins and bushings? Are they good? Sure. Do we have water leaks? Are the trim die cuts, are they cutting properly? Are the gauge temps correct? Today it's a little bit off. Running warm. This is nothing new for a lot of you here, just kind of putting everything together. And of course, when we start to record the temperatures, we have all of our control charts popping up. Let's see, 852, 871, oops, that's a little bit low. Water pump is on. I'll say that, hey, did not warm up long enough. So all the data is in there now with failures because we put in some failures. So again, what does this all mean? The question that we always ask, us techs always ask when we're on site, and you ask us, hey, how can we get this check sheet into GainSeeker? First question we ask is, well, what's the data that you're looking at? What do you want to get out of putting your check sheets into GainSeeker? For a lot of people, that answer is, well, we want to make sure we're doing what's on the check sheets. That's great. It makes it a lot easier. And so with that, we want to make sure that the way the form looks in GainSeeker, it's as easy to follow as the paper sheets themselves. Going off of that, then we ask, okay, when with these accept or reject, what is the information that's really being recorded? What is the actual failure? If there is a failure, with a lot of check sheets, you're checking the conditions, or are they acceptable? Are they in working condition? Are they not in working condition? Is it clean to specifications? And so when we go through the defects and the processes and setting all that up, that is actually important to know that when we look at the DMS process for this, we look at the defects, the name of the defects that we have match with what the defect we're actually trying to record, what that defect we're trying to record actually is. You'll notice when I go back to this check sheet, I look at something like mold condition, and the way the check sheet's laid out, one of the questions that I would ask is, you're looking at the pins and bushings, you're looking at the water leaks. Does that equate with the mold condition? Essentially, does the accept mean there's no mold, or does the accept mean there is mold, and are you expecting that? So, these are the types of questions that we're going to talk about and ask, because that drives how the data is being stored in GainSeeker. That drives how you pull up the data on a Pareto chart to view the sources of your defects, and that in turn helps give you the action, help you take the necessary actions to correct all that. Now going behind the scenes a little bit more, we look at the defects themselves, we look at the process. When I look at the actual inspection, how, some of the things that we look at is how do you want it set up? Do you want it to, when we look at those defects, are we asking the same questions that you're trying to lead the operator to have? The defects will say there will be defects, so in the case of the pins and bushings, the defect name is broken pins and bushings. We could always change the label of that, so that way, you've always, when you look at your check sheets, it doesn't say anything. It just says this particular section. And unless, it's told through the ranks, from whoever's training the new operators, this is what it means. And, there's always going to be that moment of doubt of, wait, do they mean this or do they mean that, even after you've been using the check sheet for 5, 10, 15 years. So, we really stress the importance of having that label and ensuring that, the question is worded in a way that it makes, having a pass or a fail makes sense.
So, Charles, if I could jump in. So, in some ways, we could say that just having a mold condition pass-fail, like you were kind of alluding to, those other features under the mold condition could very well have been the pass-fail conditions.
Exactly.
And so we could have just had that, and then if it's a fail, then you'd put why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, because it's a check sheet, kind of as opposed to maybe more of a DMS inspection, we're going to mimic that check sheet and just do each one.
Right. And that's one of the things to kind of to separate, when we're looking at for a check sheet, we do want to verify each step essentially, but when we're looking at a DMS inspection for a part that you're actually making, in the process, there's a lot more nuance that goes into that. Whereas a check sheet, it's, the pass fails, it's much more direct and straightforward.
Okay, great.
So one thing that, one thing that I've really noticed, recently anyway, with, the idea of setting up the DMS standard, that's a big thing that I want to touch on, because it's not really, I guess it's not really apparent, and maybe, we haven't really done a great job of teaching this point, but using the DMS standard to really drive all of these defects is really a good thing. When we look at it at the inspection, I'm a big proponent of keeping things pretty minimal in the inspection, given the information that they need. Don't try to clutter it with too much information. And so usually the DMS, sometimes, my feeling is showing the DMS standard on the sub inspection can be, I wouldn't say it's misleading, but it may just be a little bit more information than is necessary. So my preference, and this is one of the nice things about our software, is that we do have Python. We are able to set that in code and essentially make it invisible to the user. It cleans up the amount of data, or not data, the amount of information that's presented to the user, but all the information's still there. It gets to where it needs to be saved. I feel it comes across as a much more seamless experience. So that's something to really go into. And our Python library commands are very, very powerful. We use them very, very well, and we're able to do a lot of customization. We can do a lot of great things with that.
Okay. So is there anything else kind of behind the scenes on this inspection you want to show show our viewers here today, Charles?
Sure. One of the things that I really wanted to get at, aside from using Python behind the scenes, one of the things that I also wanted to show is, at least with, I really think that to have a copy of the check sheet that you're looking at, having that visible actually helps be able to kind of reinforce how the check sheet and the inspection go hand in hand. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add another formula here. Let me do this real quick. And all I'm really going to do is add file. And excuse me while I pull up this file location. You'll notice that I'm typing with any file path. You'll notice I'm using 2 backslashes. For those who are not as well versed in Python, that having a single backslash is an escape, so it'll kind of mess things up a little bit. I wouldn't say mess things up, but
it won't work.
It won't work, exactly. All right, so I've got this. One thing that I'm also going to do is make sure that the side panel does not get cleared, so that way it'll be there when I show it all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and save and publish, and then I'm going to go ahead and run this check again. File does not exist. Did I mess that up? I probably did. How did I mess that up?
Well, since we are live and you're working without a net, things are going to happen sometimes.
They will happen. Did I get this backwards? I got it backwards. There we go. So again, I've got the sheet here. Like I said, it helps to have it there so that way it kind of reinforces what's going on. And when I have this one this sub inspection that loads charts. The charts are there. I can always go back to the check sheet and show it. It just makes things, being able to load that information into the side panel really makes things a lot easier for the users. We've got companies that, they've got their instructions for wherever they have, whatever the techs are measuring right there in the side panel. So they know exactly which measurement goes with which location on the part and everything. It's all drawn quite beautifully, actually. But this is one of the nice things to have is to like I said, it's to really reinforce that idea of here's what you've been doing, and here's how it looks on here in GainSeeker, and that helps reinforce that.
Okay, so even as a transitionary, sometimes taking people, again, operators, we want them to be comfortable, and when you're introducing a lot of new technology, sometimes giving them a little bit of that familiar along with the new helps with that transition and keeps them more engaged with the process.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
The last thing to kind of touch up here, real quick in the next minute or two. Now that you've got your data in GainSeeker, how are you going to look at it? What's it going to be? What's actionable? I've got this Pareto chart, basically of the data that I looked at. Just taking a look at what's been failing from just the first page of the first sub inspection that I did. Not and so if this is what we're looking at, I want to say, okay, I need to pay the most attention to my gauge temps to make sure are they calibrated, are they working, so on and so forth. And you can watch this over time. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and open it to questions. So if we have any, I think we've got one coming in here.
So in terms of if we had set this up a little bit differently and thought about it more as DMS, how would this Pareto chart that we have, really look different? How might we use that differently, even just in a micro in this process, but even maybe in a macro sense? So we take a step back.
So I'll touch on that real quick. In a micro sense, I think knowing that the micro is just specifically to one machine, and then macro, you're looking at all of your machines across the board. So that's where traceability comes into play. By being able to spread it out across your entire plant or your company, that traceability is what allows you to drill down to a micro level or pull back to a macro level.
Yeah. And we also want to note that one of the new things in the 9.2 update is more ability to track movement in those DMS items in some of those big data views. And it's not just always about the top 10 items, but maybe something that moved from 18 to 13 and giving some data on what some of those big movers are. All right, so here's a question out there. In our experience, what are the best ways to bring tech-averse employees along with these types of new improvements?
It's kind of a hard question to answer because it really depends on how willing they are to at least give it a try. There are some people who, no matter how tech-averse they are, they'll at least give it a try and they'll say, okay, as long as it doesn't make my job any worse. And I'll be the first to say that learning curve will make it seem worse. But once that learning, there's a point where that things start to click and they realize, oh my goodness, I'm saving minutes every single time I do these checks. I'm doing a handful of checks a day. That's saving me an hour a day just on my checks, and you can get a lot of stuff done in an hour. That's pretty, I think it does take a while for those kinds of people to get on board. Time, I think, is a big factor.
I think it's also really important that as you have people who are more comfortable and are having success stories, we've seen some customers do some small short videos, do video interviews of successful people who are being successful with GainSeeker, and then they take those types of things and put them on the loop in the cafeteria monitors, do some of that. I'm actually working right now to put together a program where any GainSeeker client, if you want to have some kind of a award on your shop floor of, champions of quality or something like that, we will provide some Hertzler swag to you for those awards. So it's about buy-in. It's about the power of the crowd sometimes. It also might be pairing people up. Again, someone who's really comfortable with technology, pairing them up with someone who's not as comfortable so that they can see, teach them and bring them along. All right, excellent. Anybody else? think we're running down on time here. Definitely want to be respectful of all your time.
Mm-hmm. One last thing I'll add on to that last question is that giving people the time in order to be able to say, hey, I want you to really, try this out and see what you like with it, and say, yeah, this is going to work. I see a couple quick questions here. Can we automate connecting drawing to DMS standards? So I think the question is, can we add a Pareto chart? Yes, you can definitely add a Pareto chart to that, and it will pull all of the DMS standard, or for that DMS standard, all the charts associated with that. You would set it up much the same way as an SPC chart, but there's a section for DMS charts. We have another question that says, all the nice thing about check sheets is that all the data is in one place. Where can I do this in GainSeeker? There's a couple of ways you can do that. Dashboards may or may not be the best way. Desktops generally are the way that I would do it. And a desktop, again, is a collection of all the charts you've got open, all the dashboards you have open, so that way you can see everything all at once. The one minor drawback, in my opinion, about all of this is that you do have a lot of data that you're combining. So sometimes you want to see all of the data in one place. Sometimes it makes more sense to see it all separated. Those are things that we can work with you to be able to better visualize that.
All right. Well, I think we are out of time. Thank you all for your participation and stopping in with us. We are taking July off, as a lot of people are on summer vacation, shutdown, etc. Our next TTL will be in August. So look for those emails. We usually send them out a few days ahead and then the morning of. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Charles, for providing our technical input this week. And we'll all talk to you all soon.
Have a good one, everyone.